Hello everybody, welcome back. Up Front Off-Road here, and today I'm going to be going over the pros and cons of what it's like to daily drive a Jeep Wrangler JK. Now before we get into it, I do want to say this is my opinion, and if you disagree with me, that's fine. Everyone has their own opinion, but without further ado, let's get into it. Now the first thing, despite what a lot of people say, these are actually very reliable. Now this is based off the 2 or 3 JKs that I've owned over the years. So this one has 250, 60-ish thousand kilometers on it. Had over 3 years, and the only thing I've had to do with this was replace a fuel pump. That's it. Other than the modifications that I've done, it's the only thing I've had to do, which really isn't a lot. I've heard a lot of people say around 200,000 and 300,000 kilometers. Then I'm doing a fuel pump. It's a common problem. So the next pro about owning these is that you're really not going to have to worry about getting stuck so much as you would with other vehicles. Now, I mean, some of them come with terrible tires from the factory, but you can really easily change that, throw on a good set of all-terrains or mud terrains like we have here, and you're not really going to have to worry about getting stuck in like light snow or light amounts of mud or anything like that anymore, like you would in most other SUVs. Now, the next thing is that these have very, very good resale value. And when it does come time you do want to sell, they're also quite easy to sell. You're probably not going to lose a whole lot of money. You might not lose any. I've even heard some people say that they make money after they keep these for a couple of years and sell them. So it really just depends on how good of a deal you can get and how bad somebody else wants your Jeep. Now, another thing, these are absolutely great in deep snow. Even, like, with a set of stock size mud tires or all-terrain tires, you can go through quite a bit of snow. But, for example, you throw on a lift kit and bigger tires, big mud tires, you can go through a lot of deep snow, more so than your average truck or SUV could with the same modifications. Now, the next thing, this is something probably everybody knows, and that is you can take the top and the doors off on the Jeep, which I think is a pretty cool thing. It can be a lot of fun. The doors are pretty simple to take off. You just unhook that, and if you have power locks or power windows, a little wiring harness you want to unplug, you just wiggle your door back and forth and lift it up. And for the top, there's a few latches there, and there. For the Freedom top, you pop those out. You unscrew those there, and then there's a few bolts back in here along the back side of the top, as well as a wiring harness on the back for your rear wiper. Then you just lift it right off. Now, the next pro of a Jeep is that just very fun vehicle to drive. It's going to give you a pretty awesome, fun experience. You take the top off, take the doors off, go cruise around, go to the beach or something with your friends. They're a lot of fun. And the next thing is that they're just really easy to modify, and there is a crazy amount of aftermarket support for these. Like, you can buy anything under the sun for a Jeep. You can make it your very own one-of-a-kind vehicle. But, for example, bumpers, winch, headlights, fenders, hood, windshield frames, snorkels, light bars, lift kits, tires, rims, rear bumpers, taillights, like whatever you want to do, you can do. And the next thing too, when it comes to working on these, is they're not super complicated to work on. Now, no vehicle is easy to work on, right? But they're solid axle front and rear, so that makes it a little bit less complicated when it comes to putting in lift kits in and changing the suspension around and all that. If you know what you're doing, you have a little bit of background, it's really not that bad to work on. One bonus thing for a pro I want to throw in there, and that is the Jeep has a really big community and a really big following. So there's all kinds of people out there online that are going to be willing to answer some questions or help you if you're stuck or in any trouble, which is kind of nice. In as well, the Jeep wave, everybody who drives a Jeep is going to wave to you. It can be a fun little thing you're doing when you drive around. Next thing we'll get into is the cons. Now, the first one being pretty obvious, and that is they are hard on gas. Now, I know it's a no-brainer, everybody knows that, but they're hard on gas. A little bit different than what you might think though. Like stock, they're really not that bad, especially now the newer JKs with fuel injection and all that. Like, this gives around 11 to 13 liters per 100, depending on how you drive it, with one size bigger than stock mud tires, of course, the bumper, and the 2.5-inch lift kit. But of course, some other people who run 37s, I've heard they get anywhere from 15 to 20 liters per 100, which really isn't all that great if you have a large commute to work every morning. And the next thing, which I'm really not a big fan of, is that Jeeps throw a lot of rocks and mud and sand and stuff at the side of the vehicle. Now, these are Bushwhacker after factory fender flares, which gives you more clearance, but it's also more open on the side, so that's going to make it worse. It's going to make it throw more rocks. Now, if you have a set of running boards, that will help a lot. That'll save a lot of the stuff from coming up the side of the vehicle. And if you want to throw on mud flaps, it'll make a little bit of a difference too. And the other thing to lead on to that is that the windshield being almost straight up really doesn't deflect a whole lot. Anything that hits it just chips it or cracks it, and it's, the way it is, just a lot more stuff seems to hit it. Pretty much everybody that owns a Jeep will tell you that, they've had a few chipped or cracked windshields in their time. Another thing is it takes more effort to drive these. So let me explain. The way the Jeep is, their steering is very direct, very responsive, shorter wheelbase on the two-door. They follow every dip, nook, and cranny, bump of the road. They kind of pull you into it. So, it's just something to be mindful of. You got to pay attention when you're driving these. And if you're on the highway too, or even on the highway, it's a really windy day, the wind kind of blows you around in these, it's shaped like a brick. It's not the end of the world, just something you got to be aware of when you're driving. The next thing is a lot of these leak. Not all of them, there's a lot of them that don't. This one doesn't leak, for example, and it's over 10 years old, but I've heard some people say they buy a brand new JL from the factory and it leaks. It's not really the end of the world to fix. I have a separate video on that if you want to check that out. Now, the next thing, these are really dangerous in light snow or ice, the 2-door being worse than the 4-door. And if you have a big wide set of mud tires, you will slide around like crazy all over the place. You really got to take turns slow and just drive slow if it's poor weather conditions. And to add on to that, if you have a rear locker, that will also make you slide around in the rear end a lot worse. The other thing is that Jeeps are expensive. As I mentioned, the pros, they hold their value quite well. Well, that can be a con when you're looking to buy one. Even an older Jeep that, has quite a few miles on it can still cost a fair amount of money to get, especially if you want a newer, nicer one that has AC, it's automatic, heated leather seats and all that. Or if you want a Rubicon, it's going to cost you a fair amount of money. And of course, too, one other thing, this is worth the 2-door. There's not a crazy amount of room, the 2-door is pretty tight, like 2 people and their stuff. That's pretty much it. Really isn't room for a whole lot else. 4-doors, not quite as bad. There's a lot more room in them, but still, it can be a little tight. If you're going to go on a big long road trip or something like that, I wouldn't really recommend you take a Jeep. The thing too is that they have a lot more wind and road noise than most other vehicles, especially that's going to get worse if you have a bumper and big tires and a lift kit. They're going to hum and all that. Or if you have a light bar, you're going to get some wind noise. It's going to make kind of like an almost whistle sound as it blows through that. Some of them are worse than others, some of the more expensive ones don't do that quite as bad. And one last con, and it is the tailgate bushings. And a lot of them wear out. This is Jeep's over 10 years old. It's time for a new set. And the reason for this, like the spare tire, it's quite heavy, so it bounces around there over time, wears the bushings out in. If you forget to close your tailgate all the way and just leave it, that will put more strain on it and also make it worse. Or if you put on a bigger size than stock tire, like a 35, it's a lot more weight on your tailgate, and pretty much all the weight here is rested on those bushings. Not all of it, there's some on the other side, but just really hard on them. I'd recommend you get an after factory bumper if you're going to run a big tire that will take some of that weight. And so that's it for the video today, guys. And if you enjoyed that one and you want to support me, hit that subscribe button. And if you have any ideas that you want to see me do in future videos, let me know down in the comments below, and we'll see everyone later.